Want to know why you can trust Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne after their bad Week 11 in Week 12? And how about Rachaad White and DeAndre Swift? Will they keep it up? It's time to break it down all for you here as we look at our running back and quarterback rankings for Week 12, only on Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
Yeah, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. And we're going to change it up this week because we have one less show with Thanksgiving. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, and we'll still factor in people on the waiver wire that are out there. But a lot of injuries, but not a lot of options on the waiver wire. We will talk about the main one here on today's show, Zach Charbonnet, what to do with him here, as it's pretty clear Kenneth Walker's not going to play Thursday against the 49ers. So looks like a new starting running back into the mix. Maybe also Kyron Williams back in here for the Rams. So we'll get into all that on today's show. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app. All right, Michelle, let's dive right into it. I know you were shocked. I always set up the rankings here and look at it, but two guys I'm really high on this week, all based on the matchup. Well, a little bit based on talent too, but I have Derrick Henry all the way at number 2. I have Rachaad White all the way up at number 3. Yeah, we know Christian McCaffrey's number 1 all the time, but I know you're probably shocked to see this, but I have full confidence that these are going to be big games for both of these guys this week based on the matchup.
Yeah, I thought I was really high on Derrick Henry at running back 14. I thought we were going to have a discussion. Like, I'm trying to talk you into getting on board with Derrick Henry this week. So when I saw your ranking of him at running back 2, I was shocked because it's been, not just 2 bad weeks for him, like 2 miserable fantasy weeks from him in week 10 and week 11. He was doing all right this year. Old man was getting it done for most of the season, and all of a sudden just hit this wall. Will Levis and that Titans offense can't get anything moving. He's only seen 22 carries over the last 2 games combined. His snap count's still the same, but yeah, against this Panthers defense, if he can't do it in this game, it might be time to sit him. So we both are high on him this week. You are extremely high on him, but you got to play him. And then with Rachaad White, I love your ranking. It's bold, but I love it. I am at running back 13. Again, I thought that was fair and high, and me being nice to Rachaad White because I'm normally not. But he's been nothing but amazing over the last handful of games, at least 17 points in full PPR league in each of the last 4 games. Colts are allowing the 4th most points per game to running backs this year. I'll say over these last handful of games, right, where he's been great, he's finished as an RB16, RB11, RB1, RB12, RB14. So I think my RB13 ranking is fair for him, but I love that you have him super high at 3. It's bold.
Yeah, I think when you look at this matchup, what I looked at particularly is the Colts are not great in coverage against running backs. So that's great for Rachaad White. He's also been scoring more. He's a key part of their offense. And what I like about both of these matchups, for a change, the Buccaneers and Titans might be actually winning a game, or at least even with their opponents. You figure the Buccaneers will be at least there, right? If that's not the case, but it doesn't matter. He's not game script dependent because he can catch passes. And if they're trailing more, that means maybe more come his way in this. And then look at Derrick Henry. Look, if Tony Pollard could finally get in the end zone against the Panthers, and actually the Panthers pass defense is a little tricky, right? It's not easiest to navigate. Look, there's enough holes there. The Titans are sick of losing. They don't want to keep getting embarrassed here. Derrick Henry's still the man. When they win and they're ahead, he's great. When they're losing and they're trailing, it's bad. So it's very simple with Derrick Henry. As the team goes, he kind of goes. And I think, look, they want to win. They're going to hand it to Derrick Henry a lot this week. So, and there's also, Michelle, not a lot of backs that are like dominating touches, that are feature backs. So if there's a guy still doing that out there and healthy, they're going to be pretty high on the list. And one guy, looking at Travis Etienne, you are higher on him than I am, of course, because you have him all the way at number 3. I have a number 8, so he's still an RB1 we're looking at. Last week was basically watching Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley go off. And you also had a little bit of Dernis Johnson, Tank Bigsby all of a sudden's here. So I don't know. I think it was just the product of they wanted to get those two guys going. But I think with the Texans matchup, I think you need to kind of throw underneath to Etienne and run with Etienne a little bit more than maybe forcing it in the passing game.
Yeah, these last 2 weeks for him have been bad, but they're just such weird games, right? It was a blowout in both games. They got blown out against the 49ers in week 10, which didn't allow him to have many carries at all. He wasn't even on the field all that much. And then last week against the Titans, they blew them out. And that game started with them just easily having the lead where they didn't really need Etienne at the end of the game, right? So I do think in this game against the Texans, it's not the easiest matchup for running backs on the ground. They're middle of the pack against them in fantasy points allowed. But I do think this will be a close matchup. He'll be on the field back to his 80% of snaps, which he was for almost a whole year besides these last 2 games. And it's going to come down to the touchdowns, right? He was so good in fantasy because of all those touchdowns. Lawrence stole the 2 rushing touchdowns last week. He'll be fine this week. He's just got to get into the end zone. And then DeAndre Swift, we're a little bit different here. Again, I have an RB8, so I'm a lot higher on him than you. You have an RB19. So I think with this ranking, you're still saying plug him in with confidence. It's just you don't think he'll be a top 12 guy this week. We know the Bills are allowing a lot of yards per carry. 10th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. But I thought last night against the Chiefs, he looked really good. And they seem to want to lean on the run game. And prior to this year, it was a committee. It's all DeAndre Swift, especially as of late in that backfield.
Yeah, I do like DeAndre Swift. They're just a little bit fickle on how much they want to use him, and Jalen Hurts always seems to get the goal line love, even if they're 10 yards
Yeah.
out, and we saw him score a couple times there. And look, it's the key is getting involved in the passing game, and no, Matt Milano does definitely help. So if he gets in the end zone, I think he finishes as a pretty strong RB1. If he doesn't, he still has a pretty high floor as an RB2. So either way, you're good here with him. And yeah, they need to use him a little bit more. I also think maybe because the results, even though they won and they beat the Chiefs, congratulations on that victory in Kansas City. I think you look at their situation. Look, AJ Brown's going to pout again, even though they won the game. He's going to say, "Hey, I didn't get open, so let's find me this week." So it could be opening up the passing game a little bit. Try to get a lead on the Bills and then kind of tee off on them at home. So something to watch out for there. I just wish they were a little bit more committed, right? Like that Vikings game all the way back in week 2 where they're just like, here's 25 to 30 carries. If they were like that, then I would feel really good about him as an RB2. One guy that I really like as a borderline RB1 this week, based on the matchup, Ramondre Stevenson. I don't care who's quarterbacking the Patriots, Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. It has to be about the running game this week. And look, Mac Jones has been terrible, and he's not facilitated too much. So if Zappi's in there, he can't be much worse. So when you look at that, Stevenson, the Giants, I mean, they still gave up that big game that we're looking for to Brian Robinson Jr. It wasn't as big because the Commanders got into a deep hole. It could have been much bigger. The Patriots are going to come out and play pretty well after a bye. I mean, you look at usually Bill Belichick versus young rookie quarterbacks, it doesn't turn out well for that team. So when you look at that, the game script, the defense, running game, all that kind of stuff, correlation there. So I like Ramondre Stevenson. He started to look really good before the bye. He's well rested, probably a little bit better shape here for the stretch run.
Yeah, I think this just all comes down. So I am an RB23. You can plug him in to your RB2 spot. He should be fine. I think the difference between your ranking and my ranking is, does he come down with the touchdown or does he not? Does Zeke steal
Yeah.
it, right? And really, it's just a coin toss right now if it's going to be Zeke or Stevenson. So like the last 4 weeks, or last 5 weeks, really, he's been really good. But in that stretch, finishes RB19, RB38, RB21. So even with his decent performances, he's kind of finishing more down towards that RB23 number where I have him at. Of course, he does have that RB3 finish in there as well, though. So he does have high upside. I like him this week, just not as much as you. We're going to get into some of our lower tier RB2s and RB3/flex plays this week, including one guy who has a new offensive coordinator this week. And as a Steelers fan, I am very excited about that. But first, let's hear from a couple of our sponsors. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on the last minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing on over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. I can assure you all of these things are true. I've used this app over and over again. Almost anytime I buy sporting tickets, it is through the Game Time app the morning of the game. Absolutely love the Game Time app. Snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, all you do is create an account on the Game Time app and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This show is also brought to you from BetterHelp. Do you ever find that just as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly won't stop talking? Do your thoughts start racing right before your bed or at other inopportune moments? It turns out one great way to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk them through. Therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Please don't take your mental health unseriously. It's just important as your physical health, if not more important. So if you want to get a break from your thoughts, try out BetterHelp. All you have to do is visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedon and get on your way to being your best self. All right, Vinny, I wake up today and guess what? Just I'm having my coffee, living my life, miserable about the Steelers as usual. And then we get the announcement. Matt Canada was finally let go. I'm not saying it's going to be any better for the Steelers, but I really don't think it can be worse. But Jalen Warren, we both have him ranked as a guy we want to play this week. I am an RB17. You have an RB22. I think he has top 12 upside because, he has been the last 2 weeks. He's finished as a top 8 running back in each of the last 2 weeks. But what do you think this change in offensive coordinator will do for the Steelers offense in terms of the running backs and the wide receivers?
Well, I think there's going to be still a dedication to the running game, right? This is what's worked, and this is again Mike Tomlin's identity: win games and running game and defense as much as possible. This particular week as well, it's not really conducive. You don't want to have Kenny Pickett throw it up a lot in Cincinnati. I mean, that's still their strength. I mean, they've had some injuries up front. Sam Hubbard hasn't played. They've had some issues in the secondary with Cam Taylor-Britt hurting. So look, you could say we're going to throw it up a little bit more and it'll maybe open up the passing game, but it starts with the running game, play action, that kind of stuff, bootlegs with Kenny Pickett, getting him on the move a little bit. I think that's what you'll see. Try to scheme essentially Kenny Pickett into some better throws. The way you do that is with the running game. And with Jalen Warren, look, the Bengals are more like a power back struggling team at this point, but you can run on them outside. So I just have him a little bit lower because I think Najee will be involved in the fun this week. Remember, he was one of the most vocal, frustrated guys after the loss to the Browns. So squeaky wheel is going to get the grease a little bit more in this one. And again, you can run on the Bengals. They woke up Texans with Devin Singletary just a couple weeks ago. The Ravens just went nuts, right, with Gus Edwards. So this is just a very good matchup for both backs. And they're going to look at that and say, look, this is how we want to win games, and we're going to go their direction. So I think it's a little bit more for this passing game. We'll see, and we'll look at the wide receiver rankings, how it affects Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. But I love it for Warren and Harris going forward, especially with a great matchup this week. And another backfield duo. And look, it really comes down to how they're used. It was interesting that you had half of each duo come through basically last week. Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. It is a big-time matchup as well for them against the Broncos. Broncos defense has cleaned things up, but when you start making Ty Chandler and Alexander Madison look good in a Vikings running game, that's good for Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, who are essentially two better versions of those players.
Yeah, even though the Broncos defense definitely does look better, especially in the passing game, right? And they beat the Vikings, right? So they won each of the last 2 games.
Yeah.
Now, I will say though, like you said, the Vikings running backs were eating them up. In that Bills game, James Cook and Latavius Murray were getting chunk yards anytime they wanted. It's just the Bills weren't consistently running the ball. A big reason why probably Ken Dorsey got let go after that game. But so the Broncos are still so bad on the ground. I really love this matchup for both Ford and Kareem Hunt. It is interesting. Both had 12 carries on the ground last week. You would like to see Ford get more carries, just like get more of that workload. But if they're both getting 12 carries against this Broncos defense, I'll put them in my matchup with that workload. And then unfortunately, it'll probably come down to who gets the touchdowns. It was Kareem Hunt for 5 weeks prior to last
Yeah.
week, but Ford came down with it last week. I'm fine with both in this matchup. I do have Ford ranked a bit above Kareem Hunt, though.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt, the reason he's on the field a lot is I think the Browns team responds well to him, right? They've said a lot. And this is important in fantasy that he's kind of replaced that Nick Chubb like fiery spirit in the locker room. So the same thing with Latavius Murray. That's why they keep giving him carries in Buffalo because they respond to him and they like to get carries on the field. So it's Hunt's not going away. And he's also a good back. I mean, he's actually become a better power back than a receiving back, I think, in this offense. So it's kind of interesting. Here, he kind of morphs into necessity wherever needed with Nick Chubb. So we'll see how that plays out now. Slightly different running back now. Speaking of power versus quickness, you had Ken Walker, a bit of a home run hitter, looking for the big hole to dance through. Well, he's probably not going to play with a oblique injury. They're even talking about IR potential for him, and which would end his fantasy football season. So, Zach Charbonnet, a very fine age Charbonnet. Okay, he's only a rookie, but I love saying that name, Zach Charbonnet. It is a smooth name to say, but he's also a smooth power runner, and he looks good, and he's looked good. So if he's out there in your leagues, he's been managing a lot of leagues because we've been telling you, look, something's going to happen to Kenneth Walker. This is a clear handcuff. If he was out there and you're a Walker manager, you can blame yourself at this point. But when you look at him this week, look, he's a volume-based play. Are we feeling great about the 49ers matchup? Absolutely not. Why would we do that? I mean, but the Seahawks, this is going to be their hope here. I mean, my only concern is if it's Drew Lock in there, this could be bad too, right? If they don't trust the passing game enough. So if I am desperate, I had Walker, or I'm really hurting at running back, I go Charbonnet. But if I've got 2 better options, I go there and then I flex a wide receiver instead.
Yeah, I will say, I would feel so much better if it's Geno Smith than Drew Lock because Drew Lock's just going to want to throw it down the field and never check it down to his running back. But if it's a hurt Geno Smith just trying to get through the game, it could be a lot of dump offs. Would love that for
Yeah.
Zach Charbonnet. I think that's the only way he really has much fantasy value at all in this matchup against the 49ers. Now, he did have 6 targets, 6 receptions last week. Love to see that. And I think he would get that again against the 49ers if Geno Smith plays. So keep an eye on that. Luckily, they play on Thursday. So we're going to know pretty soon here. They play Thursday night if Geno Smith is playing or not. Zach Charbonnet, I think, is a solid play if Geno Smith plays. But let's say, okay, so we have Aaron Jones injury, Deonta Foreman injury. I don't think we know if Foreman's out yet, but Aaron Jones will not be playing. Would you rather go with their backups, A.J. Dillon against the Lions or Khalil Herbert against the Vikings over Zach Charbonnet, or stick with Zach Charbonnet?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think I would here's how I'd break it down. I think I'd play Charbonnet over AJ Dillon, but I think I would play Khalil Herbert over Charbonnet. And it might seem weird because the Vikings have been pretty good against the run. I mean, the Lions have been somewhat stonewalls against the run in a lot of cases. And AJ Dillon just doesn't have a lot of juice in the passing game, so he's not going to give numbers. But I like Khalil Herbert's big run ability. I think that Vikings Bears game also says an implied close game total, right, where the game script could be, while the Lions are 7.5-point favorites, so that could be game scripting AJ Dillon out, and they're not going to be afraid to use their wide receivers and other people in the running game, as we saw last week. So AJ Dillon's just not exciting to me. Khalil Herbert has some home run potential, right? And that's why I like Herbert. And Charbonnet, look, he's a different style of runner. Again, he can't just reel off that big run, so he's going to need a few carries, right, to get it done here and those catches. But I do like Herbert. I think he has a little bit of better upside. Plus, I don't have to stare. If Charbonnet's bad, I can wait till Monday night and have some hope with Herbert. Same thing with Dillon, right? I have to look at those box scores on Thursday where Herbert is going to have a lot of hope. Remember, he was the starter at the beginning of the season, right? And if Foreman's out, he's still going to be the guy in there ahead of Roschon Johnson.
Yeah, I do like Herbert. I wish he was used as a receiver more often. I wish
Yeah.
he got more goal line work. I would probably stick with Zach Charbonnet as long as Geno Smith is that quarterback, and then go to Herbert, and then AJ Dillon as the last option there. We've seen AJ Dillon without Aaron Jones this year, and it's been nothing special whatsoever. Let's hit on these two last running back options here. That maybe you picked off waivers last week, maybe they're still out there. Ty Chandler versus the Bears, or Keaton Mitchell against the Chargers. Do you trust either of them this week? And if so, which one would you rather go with?
Yeah, I'm actually going with Keaton Mitchell. I mean, Ty Chandler, look, I would consider him definitely in this matchup. What I would not consider is playing Alexander Madison. I just don't
Yep.
trust him now. The Bears, as we've talked about, are pretty good against the run. Chandler just seems to be a guy that's getting involved in the passing game, just looks a lot more active. So I would fade Alexander Madison hard. I mean, with the Ravens situation, obviously still going to play Gus Edwards. The Chargers have started to leak toward the run. But if you look at the Chargers, I did some research here, Michelle, looking at the big runs they've given up, right? Explosive edge runs. Last week it was Jaden Reed, right? Doing those type of things. But you've also seen them play the Dolphins, and the Dolphins have reeled off big plays. And they played Brees Hall. So these speedy type backs, and if you look at those types, I mean, they're the guys that get to the edge and speed around here. And the Chargers are going to be without Joey Bosa, their best edge player, also a very good run defender, right? So all lines up very well for Keaton Mitchell to make an explosive play or two with limited touches. So if I'm going for a floor and I just need a guy for a flex and I like the rest of my chances, okay, Chandler. But if I'm going for ceiling and if I'm going DFS and I just want to hit a home run with my guy, I'm going to go with Keaton Mitchell this week.
Yeah, I kind of really like Ty Chandler in this matchup. As you brought up, like I don't
Yeah,
want to play
pretty good.
Madison. The Bears are allowing the fewest yards per carry to running backs this year in the league, but they've allowed the most receiving yards to running backs this season by far, like allowing so many. So I think Ty Chandler will get it done in the receiving game. He's clearly the preferred receiving back with the Vikings as of late. And I thought Alexander Madison looked fine on the ground last week, but
Yeah,
I would rather
the
play Ty
matchup was
Chandler
good.
for sure. Keaton Mitchell just comes down to, does he get the long play or not? It's a total dart throw.
Yeah, I'm feeling it this week, Michelle. I'm feeling
I
like a
like
60-yard touchdown from Keaton Mitchell. That's your take it to the bank, I guess, weird bold prediction of the week. But we'll get into more talk here about our rankings, looking at the quarterbacks in our final segment on the show. But before we do that, we got to hear about a sponsor that you got to think about here during Thanksgiving. Yes, it is exciting to see that FanDuel is a official sponsor here of the NFL and America's number one sports book. And look, with America's number one sports book, you're going to get a great experience here getting in on the action. This is a great time to get in on it because you have that Thanksgiving feast of 3 games, a triple header there. You have a Friday game to go after for the first time on the holiday. So a lot of action for you. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. Every team is in action, so that's great. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that you can look at, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. It's a time, holiday season. We want to look for some more cash. That's how you can get it. FanDuel, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and continue to feast here this NFL season. Check it out. You'll get that $150 bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet for new bettors only. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, time to close the show and looking at our quarterback rankings. And look, it was tough. We lost Joe Burrow, so that's a starter out. But, Michelle, we do get one guy back in the mix, Desmond Ritter. Exciting. We lose Zach Wilson and we get Tim Boyle instead. That's not all that exciting. So maybe those are not great. But look, no teams are on bye this week. So unless you're in Superflex, you're not going to really deviate much. But the key that you're going to have to figure out the decisions. And so far, we have pretty much the same guys at the top, slightly different order. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and we can extend that to CJ Stroud at number 6. Now, let's get to our main debate here. Kyler Murray, Justin Fields. I think both of these guys are startable. You have Murray at 7, Fields at 8. I have Fields at 8, Murray at 10. So I think we're feeling really good about these guys. I mean, maybe the cheat code with the running quarterbacks is back all the way here, Michelle.
Yeah, I know. I like both of them this week. The only reason that Murray's even 7 is just because, man, those quarterbacks at the top you named have some really, really nice matchups. Excited. I am so excited for Dak Prescott against the Commanders. He might put up 50 points. I don't even know. And then the Eagles-Bills game will be so much fun to watch. With Kyler Murray and Justin Fields, neither of them have amazing matchups, right? The Rams and the Vikings, Fields gets the Vikings, Murray gets the Rams. I mean, they're both divisional games, and both of those defenses are kind of in the middle of the pack, right? In the NFL, allowing fantasy points to quarterbacks, but they're both getting it done with their legs. I love to see Kyler Murray back just in his second game, already have 51 rushing yards and a touchdown. He has a rushing touchdown in each of the first 2 games back. And I just think you just keep plugging in Kyler Murray. He looks like his old self. And once he starts throwing more passing touchdowns, he's going to be huge. But scored 21 and a half fantasy points last week. You could keep throwing him in. And then with Fields, he's scored over 21 fantasy points in each of his 3 games that he's played full, right? Over the last the last 3 games that he's played full, he's scored at least 21 fantasy points. He's getting it done with his legs now, which we were waiting for. He's also getting it through and done with the air with DJ Moore. So play both of them. Hopefully you don't have to choose between the 2. If I did, I would probably go Kyler Murray. I think he's safer. Although I got to look at my rankings here. Yeah, I do have Kyler Murray 1 spot ahead of Justin Fields.
Yeah, I would go Fields only because, again, look at the numbers on the ground he put up. A little bit more explosive, right? I think he actually more than doubled Murray on the ground. So that continues to happen, and he connects with DJ Moore a few times. Maybe some other receivers get involved. You're looking good with Fields. And I also like the fact that both these games are in contained environments, right? It's home for Murray, and you got Justin Fields in Minnesota. So those are nice, real spots for both these quarterbacks, and you can totally smash. If you have them super flex, enjoy the points, and you might have league winners with this combination the rest of the way. Now, look, Michelle, hard guy to rank this week for me was Justin Herbert, and because of all these guys like Josh Dobbs in between, but I have Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy's on a heater here. So that's part of it. But Justin Herbert, I felt 11 is the right spot, and maybe that's high. I don't know. Justin Herbert, you have seen a random quarterback, Gardner Minshew, have a big game against the Ravens. So hopefully we're hoping for that. But look, you're still playing Justin Herbert, I think. But 2 guys I think you can totally avoid that have been quarterback ones in terms of the top 12 of the season. Sam Howell playing at the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, Tua playing on Black Friday there at the Jets. These are just brutal road matchups I would avoid, I think.
Yeah, unless you happen to be able to pick up Fields and Murray, like if your league doesn't have IR spots and people had to drop them, and you have Justin Herbert and you want to play them instead, or maybe you have Brock Purdy or CJ Stroud, I'm fine with playing them instead of Justin Herbert this week because the Ravens are a miserable matchup for him, allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. Now, I do think the Ravens offense scores a ton of points against the Chargers defense. So Herbert's going to have to pass a lot, try to score a lot. He might be okay. But with Sam Howell and Tua Tagovailoa, I agree with you. Like, I don't want anything to do with Tua. We've seen now, especially on the road, he doesn't put up very many fantasy points. And when he plays good defenses or even good teams, like he's not getting it done. Jets are so good at covering the wide receivers, and that's all he has to pass to, right? Like, if they're going to stop Tyreek Hill even just a little bit and Jalen Waddle, it's going to be a terrible day for him. With Sam Howell, he's so hard because you never know what you're going to get from him. I do think like the Cowboys are going to put up a ton of points against the Commanders, right? Sam Howell's going to have to throw a ton. We'll see. I would rather play Sam Howell than Tua, but he is ranked far down my list this week. I have Sam Howell at quarterback 15. I have Tua at 16. So back to back.
Yeah, my one concern, Michelle, is that either could blow up in your face badly, right? And I don't like that at all. I don't like the volatility of that type of matchup. It's kind of like the Trevor Lawrence, but in 1 week, right? He has such volatility. He goes from minuscule points to big points. It could be a wide range of outcomes. The buzzwords, they're putting them together there. Now, let's look at one other either or here. I've got Josh Dobbs at 9, and you have a little bit lower at 11. I have Jared Goff buried at 16. You have him at 10. So clearly I am going Dobbs over Goff. And I'll explain that really quickly. I think when you look at Dobbs, he's just been consistent. He's He's got that combination of rushing and passing right every start here so far for the Vikings. I don't think Justin Jefferson's going to be quite back, but it's a great matchup for everyone else, including TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison. So I just like it. I think that could be a higher scoring back and forth affair. Where I look at Jared Goff, look, they're going to go back to basics in the running game. If you look at the first matchup, they didn't really trust Goff a lot, right? They won 34-20. They ran away. The defense played well. So they might not need Goff to put it up a lot, especially they might be a little bit shy right after the 3 interceptions and they got behind last week. I think they might come out and try to smash it a little bit with the running game. And look, he can lose touchdowns easily, right, to his 2 backs. So that's where I'm feeling it with Dobbs over Goff.
Yeah, I'm okay with Dobbs over Goff. I have them ranked back to back pretty much. So maybe I end up even switching it by the end of the week. Josh Dobbs is just a consistently good scorer. He wasn't great last week, but had the interception, had the fumble that should have not have been a fumble because it was a penalty. But I'm fine plugging him in. The Bears are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. If you want to start Dobbs over Goff, fine with that. I also think Goff at home will be just fine. And then to close out today's podcast, we have two quarterbacks playing in the same game, and I think both of them are playable, with Baker Mayfield being ranked higher for us. So we have Baker and Gardner Minshew. We have the Buccaneers against the Colts. Now, Baker Mayfield, we both have ranked as quarterback 13. We said last week, do not play him against the 49ers in San Francisco, and it was not a good week. But prior to that, he was having a lot of consistently good fantasy weeks. I think you can go back to playing him if you need to. And then with Gardner Minshew, it's just, if you're desperate, need a streamer, maybe Joe Burrow went down, right? And there's no one else out there for you. Buccaneers are allowing the 2nd most passing yards per game this season. I think he has the chance to have a high upside in this game.
Yeah, you were looking at the matchups for his receivers. They're fantastic. I mean, the Buccaneers secondary is falling apart. Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Levante David, their fine cover linebacker, got hurt last week, and the 49ers immediately exploited it for a George Kittle touchdown last week. So something to look at, but Minshew doesn't really have good tight ends. It's pretty much relying on Michael Pittman and what Josh Downs can do, and then there's not a lot. So Minshew is just very volatile. Like, keep in mind, he's a streamer that you wouldn't be surprised if he has 303 or he has 150-1. Any of those things can happen with Gardner Minshew, especially with Jonathan Taylor's running game. So I think with Baker Mayfield, he's pretty established, right? He's playing off the run, play action. Mike Evans got all that. The matchup is good enough. But Minshew, and that's why we have Minshew buried. So I'm just not trusting Gardner Minshew, and hopefully you won't have to here this week, because I just don't want to go in that direction, because you're getting that Matthew Stafford or Derek Carr. No, I want to avoid that as much as possible this week.
I will say I'll have Michael Pittman Jr. ranked pretty high in tomorrow's show when we go through wide receivers. And maybe Gardner Minshew is more of a DFS play. You do Minshew and Pittman in a big tournament game and try to strike gold there.
All right, so that wraps up. We kind of switched gears here and went through the waiver wire. But if you have these players that are available in your league and you like them, go ahead and pick them up and play. Not a lot of options there for you. We'll talk about maybe some more of those guys with our wide receivers and tight ends to get you going before we take the Thursday Thanksgiving holiday off. Enjoy the games and come back at you Friday. Again, don't forget on the network that we've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day in sports. The local experts have Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So check it out here. Also, thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen day. Again, thankful very much this Thanksgiving week for this Tuesday edition of Locked On Fantasy Football. This has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.